Hello and welcome to the Offspeed podcast. My name is Matt Sadler.
I'm Dan Gamache.
And today we're going to be talking about the upcoming trade deadline. We're going to be talking about it with our good friend, Mr. John Hollahan. Welcome to the show, John. And, hey, John, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
We wanted to have you on here for a couple different reasons. Number one, you're very knowledgeable about baseball, very insightful. Number two, you're very good looking, which is great for podcasts.
That is true.
Yeah. And number three, you're a Mets fan, so you can be completely unbiased about teams that are competing right now.
The Mets are buyers at the deadline. Let's just cut to the chase.
Oh, they're going to be buyers.
In my heart of hearts.
Who are they going after then? If the Mets were buyers, who would they need?
Hey, just shoot for the stars.
All right. Well, let's say hypothetically, John, the Mets are sellers. Yeah. Do you think they're going to move Zach Wheeler? Or there's been talk of Syndergaard, DeGrom.
Boy, we're moving right along, aren't we? Wheeler just got sent to the IL, so that's probably going to sap his value quite a lot from whatever it was even to begin with. So if they do move him, it'll probably for up something like a C prospect at best. Syndergaard could probably fetch a little bit more because he still has a few years on his contract. He's a little bit younger. And probably still has a higher upside than Wheeler, so he would be more likely to fetch a decent return. But no, they're not actually buyers. I don't think so.
Juan Lagares is in the final year of his deal, as is Todd Frazier. Do either of those guys get moved? Are they worth anything?
Frazier has kind of had a bounce back year, so I could definitely see him being moved. But for what? I mean, at this point, there are a lot of Todd Fraziers out there in baseball. He's not necessarily a game changer for any team, I don't think. So nobody is going to really give up too much for him.
There's a lot of Toms River, New Jersey third baseman out there.
Exactly. There are a lot of people who posed with Derek Jeter in the Little League World Series, and it just doesn't mean the same thing it used to.
Dime a dozen.
So, yeah, it should be a kind of underwhelming trade deadline as far as the Mets go, but let's not make it all about me this time around.
Well, underwhelming is always a great way to describe the Mets. But let's move on and let's talk about some buyers. Right now, the Braves are winning the National League East. You got a tight race in the Central. Cubs, Brewers, and actually all five teams are still in it in the Central. Out west, the Dodgers are starting to run away with it. Do they need anything? And do any of the teams out west trying to chase a wild card spot, what do they need? Like National League, let's focus first on Atlanta, the Dodgers, and maybe Cubs, Brewers, Cardinals, the division leaders, guys trying to win the division. What do they need to compete?
Atlanta looks pretty good. They can always get something more, but I think they've got about one of the best team ERAs in the National League.
Yeah, I think Atlanta and the Dodgers right now, if they didn't make any moves, could still win the World Series as they are.
I could see them going after somebody like Hunter Renfroe or Franmil Reyes.
Yeah, the Padres have a surplus of young outfielders.
I think it's the Phillies and the NL East who really need to make a move. They are right now tied for the second wild card spot with the Brewers. Negative 15 run differential, so their pitching has been really disappointing, including Nola, who's started to turn it around recently. But beyond him, you have guys like Nick Pivetta who are just not really kind of cutting it, and I could definitely see them trading for one of the big guys like Bumgarner maybe.
All right, so if you're the Phillies, you're going after a starter and not just a secondary guy like a big guy, a Bumgarner.
Yeah.
What about a Marcus Stroman? His name has been tossed around, the Blue Jays ace. He's still got a year left on his deal after this year.
I see that too. It'd be interesting to see how his stuff plays in that ballpark. But I think they should really aim higher just because the National League is kind of so... Like, the wild card standings right now are just crazy.
Yeah, every team in the National League... I believe every team in the National League is 500, exactly, all at once.
Really, you have the Marlins who are 12.5 games out of the second wild card. And then the next teams are 5 games out. So it's like pretty... I don't know. if I were the Phillies, that's what I'd be looking for. I'd be looking to break the bank for one of the top line starters on the market.
All right, well, let's talk about the starters. Who is the best starter available? You got, we mentioned Marcus Stroman, Madison Bumgarner, Matthew Boyd of the Tigers. His name has been thrown around. Obviously, Zach Wheeler, potentially maybe Syndergaard or DeGrom if the Mets wanted to go that way, although that seems unlikely. To you, who is the best starting pitcher that you think might get moved?
I would probably go after Syndergaard, honestly.
And you think the Mets would move him?
Within the division.
I think they would. I don't think that those same biases against moving people within the division exist as much as they did before, and I don't think they really should. If it's the best move for your team, you should do it. I mean, the Mets need to rebuild, and if they can get the best prospects from the Phillies, I think they should do it. And for the Phillies, it would give them a top shelf, at least in terms of potential starter for down the stretch and for the next 2 years as well. So yeah, it's hard to know.
Well, keep in mind the Phillies moved their best pitching prospect as well as a catching prospect to get Real Muto this offseason.
Yeah, that's right.
So how much do they have left to offer for a top tier guy like that?
Yeah, if you're really going to trade Syndergaard, it should have been when his value is a lot higher than it was in the offseason, but that's sort of the way things go with the Mets. They do things a little bit too late. But so it's Syndergaard, or I know Bumgarner has a partial no trade clause, and I'm not exactly sure what the specific contract language is there.
Yeah, he's got a few teams that he can reject.
You know, he's having a mediocre year by his standards, but he does sort of seem like the type of guy who, if you put him in a playoff hunt position, sort of will, rise to his best self.
All right, couple starters. Here we go. Stroman, will he be moved? Be bold. Say something crazy.
I'll take this one.
Yeah,
I
Dan?
think you move him.
100% he goes to the Yankees.
100%.
The Yankees and Jays have already proven that they'll go ahead and swap players last year with Happ. And I think the Yankees have the prospects to give up, and even major league ready players to give up to get him.
So you guys are big on trading big starters within the division. That's what the theme is today.
Dan, I'll be honest with you. I missed most of what you just said because I got an emergency flash flood warning on my phone that just screamed into my ears.
In New York?
In New York. So things are looking a little hairy out here,
Well,
just so you know.
This is not broadcast live, so we can't really warn anybody, but I guess in hindsight, I hope you're all okay.
Yeah, just in case anybody listens to this and finds themselves traveling back in time. Anyway, Dan, I missed most of what you said, but I trust that it was pretty insightful.
Good ad.
Yeah.
The real one I want to know is Clay Buchholz going to get moved? Because the Blue Jays, I mean, they've got two of the greatest starters. They got Stroman. They also got Clay Buchholz, who is still pitching and not pitching as well as he did last year. He has a 6.57 ERA.
They should have traded for him last year.
Yeah, he finished last year with a 2.01 ERA. Just had to bring up Clay Buchholz. You don't actually have to comment.
Clay Buchholz. I think he's a guy you really want to just break the farm for at this point.
I think
in his career
with Buchholz, it's situational at this point in his career. You bring him in when the other team is exhausted, and you just have him wait them out.
Yeah,
20 minutes between each pitch. Eventually, the other team falls asleep and they forfeit. Mm-hmm. I think that's a decent strategy.
That's the new Moneyball. Stroman, though, I think has to get moved. I mean, he is having a career year. He's the right age. His value, I don't think, to the Blue Jays is going to be higher than it is now. This is kind of a no-brainer to me if you're the Blue Jays.
And they have such a great young core that, go out, get another prospect, probably a pitching prospect because they have so many great hitting prospects.
Sure, but somebody who's going to be ready in 3 years.
Yeah, they can compete, maybe not next year, but 2 years from now. They're going to have a hell of a team.
Yeah.
All right, Matthew Boyd of the Tigers, big surprise pitcher this year. Will he be moved? Dan, go first.
I don't think so. I think the Tigers are going to ask for the moon. He's got 3 years of arbitration left.
By the way, happy anniversary of the moon landing.
Yeah.
To everyone.
Yeah.
Indeed.
All right, so they're going to ask for too much.
He's not. Yeah, he's not. There's so many other rentals on the market, like Robbie Ray, like Madison Bumgarner, that I think that you can give up a lot less to get someone who's just as good.
Hollahan, Matthew Boyd, moving.
I would be tempted to move him just because you can't expect this kind of production from him given his career numbers. And if you can get prospects, and he, with the amount of time he has left on his contract, he probably stands to fetch the biggest return, or one of the bigger returns of all the starters on the market. So, depends on the deal, but I would move him.
Definitely the biggest return, just based on longevity of having the player.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe Trevor Bauer, just because he's worlds better, and sort of proven it over the last few years. But yeah.
All right, let's each come up with a big surprise move. It could be a surprise player that is not necessarily being talked about, or maybe a surprise team. I think the Padres, for one, are still kind of in it. Maybe they're buyers, maybe they're sellers. They have a lot of prospects. They could potentially go after one of these big starters. I know there were rumors in the offseason about them maybe making a trade for Syndergaard. So that's one to consider. But I'm actually going to pick, I'll go first because I'm selfish and I want to say this. I think that Yasiel Puig, I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to live life dangerously. Yasiel Puig gets traded back to the Dodgers at the trade deadline. Wow. Yes, it is unlikely, but that is why it is bold.
I like it.
Right? I think, they got prospects for him, and they could get him back for less prospects.
And they did it before with Matt Kemp.
They did it. Yeah, they've done this before with outfielders. He's a fan favorite. Frankly, I think they have that division locked up. If anything, you bring him back in to just play right field for the last month. Give Cody Bellinger some time off. Make sure he doesn't get injured. Make sure he's ready for the playoffs. And then Puig is just a defensive replacement with a cannon of an arm come October.
I like it.
All right, I got my bold prediction, and it builds off of yours. Now this, hold on to your butts. Bumgarner gets moved in state, in division, and joins Yasiel Puig on the Los Angeles Dodgers.
The Dodgers are not one of the teams that he has specified that he can reject a trade to. So it could happen. And the Giants do need to move him, I think, because they're not going to win this year. It's his last year.
That's right. So part of that is just after what you said about Puig, Matt, just really wanting to see them on the same team in playoff baseball, just to for the entertainment aspect of the game.
Yeah.
I think
two guys that just absolutely love each other.
Bumgarner,
exactly.
Yeah,
with Puig and Kershaw's there, and it's just a fun, happy. Also, Kemp was released. Kemp is out there.
Yeah, they could sign him.
Maybe bring back Kemp.
They could bring back Hanley.
I think.
And fuck it. Trade for Greinke too. Just get the band back together.
It's all been building towards this. They've lost 2 World Series in a row.
They've got nothing left to lose, man.
Yeah.
Building a team with a good clubhouse atmosphere has not worked for them. So why not just put together an all-star team of people who are gonna play their hearts out because they're gonna be pissed at each other. It's one way to go.
That's right.
All right, Dan, do you have a bold prediction?
Yeah, I think the Texas Rangers are buyers.
Okay, can you be more specific? What are they going to buy?
I think they're going to go after Jose Abreu.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow, that is bold.
And I think they're going to go after. I think they're going to go after a starting pitcher. Maybe Greinke. We're being bold. Yeah, they're going to go after Greinke.
Wow, so they're not only going after people, but they are spending, because I know Greinke is owed quite a bit.
$70 million, I think.
The one thing is, the Diamondbacks are only a game out of the second wild card. I know they're only a game over 500, but don't they have to look at the reality of the situation in the National League? And it's such a weak league outside of the division leaders. relatively speaking.
Well, yeah, they are still in the wild card hunt. First of all, the one advantage to maybe advantage, but the one thing that makes it easier to sell for them is the fact that they have no shot at the division. If you're an NL West team, you have a shot at the wild card. All four of them do, but none of them have a chance of catching the Dodgers. So you already know it's really a shot at playing a one-game playoff, which is
Right.
And who do you want to start that?
So if you're the Diamondbacks, I think it might be worth the risk to sell off Greinke, in part because last year they let A.J. Pollock walk, they let Patrick Corbin walk, and they traded away Goldschmidt, and now really their only big money player left is Greinke, and that contract is kind of the only thing that could bar them from rebuilding. And obviously they don't have that much rebuilding to do because here they are right around 500 as we hit July.
See, but I think they take the chance at the wild card spot in the game, and Greinke still has pretty solid value as a trade chip in the offseason if it doesn't work out for them. He still has 2 years left on his deal?
2 years.
Right?
I think it depends if somebody's willing to foot the bill.
Yeah.
On a lot of his contract, I think they're much more likely to trade him. I mean, hey, I was being bold with this and said Greinke. I think it's much more realistic that Texas goes after somebody like Baumgartner. But hey, you said bold prediction.
I did say bold. That was the only requirement. It didn't have to even be realistic. It just had to be bold. Let me just say that the Diamondbacks, I feel like they have, certainly last year, and I think in past years, they've kind of had a track record of kind of fading down the stretch. And if this were another year, you'd have the second deadline, the waiver deadline on August 31st. That doesn't exist this year, so you kind of have to make a decision by July 31st. Still 2 whole months left. You're only 2/3 away in the season. You have to make a strong decision. Are we in? Are we out? Are we just going to stay pat? And I think the Diamondbacks could be sellers, especially if somebody's willing to take on Greinke's contract, in part because they don't play well down the stretch. And I think it's because they get tired because they play in Phoenix in August and September, and they get dehydrated.
It's fucking hot there.
It's a tough call. I mean, the hard trade deadline it kind of makes things really exciting for me.
It does, especially in a year like this where there, again, are so many teams that are still in it. I mean, how many teams are really eliminated from the playoffs?
Exactly. Just looking at the National League wildcard standings, I mean, in any other year, all of these teams could just wait and then wait for the August deadline.
Yeah,
and
you could
say,
argue.
All right, let's see how August goes, and then we'll reevaluate.
Yeah, you could argue that right now the Marlins are the only team that's out of it in the National League.
In the National League, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a normal year with an August 31st deadline, they probably would be the only hard sellers right now. Cincinnati, the Mets, Pittsburgh, kind of on the cuff of that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think all the teams that are kind of below the Diamondbacks in the rankings, basically from the Giants down to the Reds, should probably not go for it. I would say, but then again, I mean, it's a different year. You don't really know what's going to happen. You got to go for it sometimes.
Sometimes you just gotta go balls
live
to the
Moss.
walls. Sometimes you gotta live Moss.
This episode brought to you by Taco Bell.
I hope someone steals a base in the World Series. That's all I hope for. I don't care who wins the damn World Series as long as there's a stolen base and I get my free taco. Which I did get this past year. I think was it Mookie Betts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't it game one? It was like the first.
Yeah, it was like very early. There was no suspense
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of the World Series, we did not have you on at the beginning of the season to get your predictions. So you're not on record, and you can completely pretend that you totally saw the first half of the season coming. Give us the LCSs. Who's going to be playing in the American League Championship Series and the National League Championship Series?
The ALCS, I predict, comes down to the Yankees and the Twins. And I think the Yankees definitely have a starter in that playoff rotation that they don't have right now. Maybe Stroman, Baumgartner, who knows. And I think the Twins beat them in 6 games. I believe in the Twins.
Interesting. All right. Well, as we remember, I did pick the Twins to win this division at the beginning of the year, and we'll give you the benefit of the doubt and pretend that you did too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So the Twins are going to beat the Yankees, and then on the National League side, who you got? Who are the Dodgers playing in the NLCS?
It's going to be the Dodgers. Yeah.
With Puig or without Puig?
with Puig.
Con Puig.
That was a pretty sophisticated joke right there. That's much more highbrow than most
So
of our.
for all of our bilingual listeners.
Yeah. I think the Dodgers take on the Braves.
Dodgers Braves. All right. So a rematch
Yeah.
of the division series last year.
Yeah.
All right.
And I think the Dodgers will make their 3rd World Series appearance and a 3rd consecutive World Series appearance.
First team since the turn of the century Yankees to do that, correct? If they do.
And I also predict they will lose their 3rd straight World Series.
To the Twins.
I'm all about the Twins this year.
It's a classic 1965 World Series rematch. I mean, we all remember where we were when Jim Cott took on Sandy Koufax in the 65 World Series.
Exactly. Harmon Killebrew.
All right, so you're taking the Twins over the Dodgers.
That's right.
Matt, what are your updated postseason predictions?
I think it's safe to say that the Dodgers will return to the National League Championship Series. It is tempting to take the Braves right now. There's been issues for the Cubs and for the Brewers. But in the spirit of going bold, which I did earlier, there's something going on with the Nats. And if they grab a wild card spot, you've got Scherzer in a wild card game, and all of a sudden having that top 3 in the rotation in the playoffs, they're kind of built for the playoffs with Corbin and Strasburg and Scherzer. And some of those kids, Juan Soto right now looks like he might be better than Bryce Harper. So let's say the Nats every year favored to win the division. They win the division. They can't get through the first round. Let's say now that they're an underdog, they take the wild card and they blow through the divisional round and they make it all the way to the LCS before they lose to the Dodgers. So like a kind of hopeful story.
I like it.
And then on the American League side, unfortunately, I do think there's really no way to avoid the Yankees making it in there. And I don't even really want to go on now that I think about this. I'll say Yankees, Astros. And you know what? This pains me to say it, but I'll take New York. So it'll be a Dodgers, Yankees World Series. I'll take the Yankees over the Dodgers.
And they become the first team to lose the World Series 3 times in a row?
Yeah, I like that. As much as I don't want the Yankees to win, it would be kind of funny for the Dodgers to lose 3 in a row. And I say that, nothing but love for all my Dodger friends. But let's say the Dodgers lose a 3rd in a row. They lose to the Yankees.
Now, if there's one wild card team in the AL that could potentially play spoiler to the Yankees in the ALDS, who do you think it is?
Probably the Red Sox, who beat them in the DS last year and have a fairly similar team. They're not playing as well, but once you get into the division series, and if Sale and Price are pitching well, they could be trouble for the Yankees. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, historically, the Angels are Yankee killers.
That's true too.
So, God forbid they make a little bit of a run. They're only 5 games out of the wild card as of this moment.
They're playing better since the death of Tyler Skaggs. They are playing better. They seem to be they've bonded as a team, and they seem to be playing with a purpose. Kind of the opposite of our made-up Dodgers scenario, where we put a bunch of people who hate each other in the same clubhouse. The Angels have a brotherly like love. So if they made the playoffs, yeah, I could see them beating the Yankees. They historically are kind of the only Yankee killers. Hollahan?
Yeah. I would love to see the Angels get in there and take it to them. But I think the Rays match up well against the Yankees, and a 5-game series is enough of a crapshoot that I think they would have a chance.
I'll tell you what. I'll give you $10 if you can name 5 players on the Rays.
Rocco Baldelli.
Rocco Baldelli is still on the team, absolutely, 100%. I think
Kevin Cash.
Fred McGriff is still there too. Wade Boggs is hitting. Yeah.
Travis Darno.
Oh, that's true. Former Met.
Kevin Kiermaier.
Okay.
Yep.
Is Sergio Romo on the Rays?
No, he's on the Marlins this year. So he actually could be.
He got traded up as far as you could go to Seattle, and then he signed as far as you could go to Miami.
He as a Marlin, on a 1-year deal, he actually could be somebody who gets dealt at the deadline. So you can't name 5 Rays. That's
the reigning Cy Young Award winner Blake Snell. I think we have 5 between us.
G-Man Choi.
Yeah, one of my favorite players, G-Man Choi.
Okay, so we're at 3. 3 actually.
But I like them.
G-Man Choi as 3? Was that a fat joke?
Is he in AAA?
Don't. No.
Travis Darno.
He's a
Kevin
large
Kiermaier.
man, but he's lovable.
Blake Snell. Charlie Morton.
That's 3. Charlie Morton.
We've got multiple guys with the last name Lowe, but it's pronounced differently. They have Lau and Lowe.
One of the Chirinos.
There's only one Chirinos. Robinson Chirinos, the catcher? I don't think he's on the Rays.
The pitcher.
Oh, that's right. They have a Chirinos. That's right. The Rays do have a Chirinos.
Look at that. We named six current players, the Rays, and a handful of former players who may or may not still be on the team.
All right. Speaking of the Rays, Dan, who's going to be in the American League Championship Series and the National League Championship Series?
I have the Yankees beating the Astros in my updated postseason prediction, and I have the Braves beating the Dodgers in the NLCS, and I have the Braves winning it all
in a 99 and 96 rematch.
Yeah. Yes.
See, I don't know. I never. I always am skeptical of the Braves' chances in the playoffs. They're just such an underachieving playoff team historically.
I was going to ask you guys, what team do you think absolutely has to make a deal before the deadline? Like if it's only one team in all of baseball that makes a deal, who is it for you?
Interesting. That's a good question.
That's a good question.
I will say I'll say the Cubs.
Okay.
The Cubs have they won the wild card last year, won the division a couple of years in a row before that. It's very much expected for them to win that division. It's a tough division, and they've clearly shown a lot of holes this year. Potentially some infield depth or a relief pitcher. I think the Cubs need to make a move.
And I'm sticking with the Phillies. I think their lineup is too good for to settle for such mediocre starting pitching. I think they need to land one of the big guys, because that they're 8 games back in the division, but the wild card is certainly there for the taking, and they got to go for it.
All right. So to recap, the Phillies and Braves suck. Thanks for the insight, Mr. Mets fan. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
All right, Dan.
It's the Dodgers for me.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think their bullpen needs help. Baez has been somewhat effective, but they have no way to get to Jansen. And I think if they go to another postseason without having some sort of way to shore things up late in games, I think there's going to be a riot in Los Angeles. Stripling and Maeda moved to the bullpen, but geez, you lost 2 World Series in a row, guys. Fucking go for it.
And the Dodgers also could use a few more hitters because they don't quite have a lefty and righty at every single position yet. So maybe
somebody like Puig.
Yeah, he could do. They could definitely use.
I could see, definitely a Puig's type of player.
Definitely a right-hand hitter to play right field, so that against lefties you just bench Cody Bellinger, even if it's Game 7 of the World Series against a lefty like, I don't know, CC Sabathia. See what I did there? All right. Before we wrap up, we do have one segment that we like to do with our guests when we have a guest on the show. John Hollahan, I want you to do your best here to try and explain to me a sabermetric stat. Okay?
Oh, God.
Here we go. You're probably the best with these of anyone we've had on, because we tend to have baseball traditionalists who they don't even like on base percentage again. Okay. All right. How do you calculate secondary average?
I have no fucking clue.
Secondary average. So it's like a type of batting average. So it's something, some things added up over another number. Give me a guess.
Secondary average.
You can totally make it up.
So, secondary average. I think that's got to be something like the average. God, I'm like trying to think of something funny and snarky to say because I have absolutely no idea what it might be. But I'm actually not funny or snarky enough to even come up with anything.
I think you're snarky.
So, oh boy.
All right. Well,
all right. I go one.
It doesn't have to make sense.
It's your batting average after you've hit a foul ball.
Interesting.
Oh.
Almost like a second chance, or included in that is like a foul tip that the catcher doesn't hold on to.
Okay.
Secondary average, like your second life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Or it could be just your average in your second at bat.
Yeah.
It's
or
not
if
any of those things, by the way. But yes.
If a fielder drops your ball in foul territory, similar to what Dan was saying, and then you get a second chance that way. I think that's it. I'm pretty sure that's it.
Okay. You guys ready for what it actually is?
Yeah.
No.
Secondary average is total bases. So the singles 1, home runs 4, right? Total bases minus hits plus walks plus steals minus caught stealing, and all of that is above at bats. So we've got if you're taking total bases,
I understand.
minus hits, it's kind of like a extra base hit kind of thing. Add in walks, add in a steal because it's also a secondary base, getting to second kind of.
Yeah.
Minus caught stealing, and then throw that all over how many at bats you got.
So somebody like D. Gordon who hits singles and steals second.
He will probably have about the same as a doubles hitter.
Yeah.
It kind of evens
because he
that
hits
out.
a single and it's double the ball.
Right. So it's like it's kind of like a slugging percentage thing, but it also factors in steals.
Okay.
And, would anybody like to guess the best and worst teams at secondary average?
I'll say the Orioles are pretty low down on there.
I'll say the Dodgers are the best.
The Dodgers are the best. They have a secondary average this season of 327, which
that's about what I would have guessed. That's about what I would have guessed.
The worst secondary average is 197, significantly lower. 130 points off of the Dodgers pace. Who has the worst secondary average? Don't think
not the Orioles.
Don't think too hard. No. So if it's not the Orioles, who does it have to be?
The Marlins.
Very good. There you go. All right, that's secondary average. Thank you very much for being on the show, John Hollahan.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matt. Dan, I'm just glad I could provide some of my very seasoned expertise.
Yeah, mostly just Mets angst.
Yes, yeah, that's what I call my seasoned expertise.
But more importantly, Yankees hatred.
That's always welcome on the podcast. We try to be positive towards 29 out of 30 teams.
Yeah. You try to sublimate your negativity towards your team in a way, but the hate still ends up, creeping through every now and then.
We also try not to use words like sublimate because we have a pretty low IQ listener base.
That's understandable.
Except for you, who's listening to this right now. You're the smart one. Everyone else is the dumb one. All right. That'll wrap things up here. For the Offspeed podcast, thank you to our guest, John Hollahan. My name is Matt Sadler.
I'm Dan Camacho.
We'll see you next time. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Take care, guys.